The meeting room was a fortress of glass and power. Top floor, skyline view, leather seats, and crystal water bottles that cost more than lunch in most neighborhoods. Everyone inside wore tailored suits and spoke in quiet, calculated tones until silence swallowed the room like a wave. The CEO, Richard Galloway, was one of the most respected men in international finance. Tall, graying, and sharp-eyed, he had navigated deals with oil sheiks, tech billionaires, and foreign ministers. But today, for the first time in his career, he was cornered speechless. It was supposed to be a simple acquisition meeting. The Tokyo-based conglomerate wanted to partner with Galloway's firm for a green energy initiative. Billions were on the line, and reputations even more so. But what no one anticipated was that their primary translator had tested positive for COVID just hours before. The backup never showed up, and no one in that shining room spoke fluent Japanese, except the other side of the table. They spoke calmly, confidently, and with growing impatience. And Richard Galloway, for all his power and wealth, could only nod, sweat gathering under his Armani collar. And then, something happened. From the back corner of the room, near the glass door where the cleaning cart usually sat unnoticed, a soft voice spoke in fluent, elegant Japanese. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Standing in a plain maintenance uniform, holding a clipboard and a bucket, was a young black woman, no older than 22. Her name tag read, Maya. Most had never even looked at her before. "Sumai Mason," she said, bowing slightly. "Would you like me to translate?" The room fell dead silent. Richard Galloway blinked, confused. His assistant whispered in disbelief, "That's Thomas's daughter, the night janitor. She sometimes helps him on weekends." "Number one," answered. The Japanese CEO across the table sat up straighter. "Wakarimasu ka?" he asked her. She smiled gently. "Hi," she replied, and began translating, word for word. With nuance and grace, the deal that was about to collapse was suddenly alive. Again, because of the janitor's daughter. What happened next would change not only the company's future, but Maya's life forever. Maya grew up surrounded by language, but not in the way most would think. Her father, Thomas, had lost his hearing in his early 30s after a construction accident. From then on, their small household in South Los Angeles became a haven of hand sign language fluttering through the rooms. Like butterflies, Maya learned to communicate with her father without speaking. She'd watch his eyes, not his lips. She felt his heartbeats more than heard his voice. It made her observant, patient, and emotionally intelligent far beyond her age. But it was her mother, Naomi, who taught her to love sound again. A librarian by day, Naomi was a lover of words. Every evening, she'd read to Maya in 3 languages: English, Spanish, and Japanese. "Words are bridges," she'd say. "And one day, you'll cross one that changes everything." Tragically, Naomi passed away from breast cancer when Maya was just 15. Maya was devastated, but her mother's teachings burned bright in her. She poured herself into language studies. She watched Japanese dramas, devoured subtitles, read manga in its native form. By 17, she was conversational. By 19, she was fluent. To help with rent, she began accompanying her father to his night job janitorial work in downtown high-rises. She'd mop floors, wipe down tables, and sometimes sneak into the empty boardrooms to sit in the leather chairs and whisper Japanese vocabulary to herself. No one ever noticed her. Until that day. As Maya translated flawlessly, switching between boardroom jargon and cultural nuance, the executive sat transfixed. Every word was precise, every phrase tailored to bridge not just language but culture, trust, and diplomacy. It wasn't just translation. It was orchestration. The Japanese CEO, Mr. Sakamoto, nodded with growing approval. His eyes stern and unyielding at the start of the meeting, now softened with each carefully interpreted sentence. At one point, he even smiled. In the world of billion-dollar negotiations, that was equivalent to a standing ovation. When the meeting ended more than 2 hours later, the room burst into applause. The contracts were signed, the digital seals pressed into place, and the cameras clicked. Galloway's firm had just secured a billion-dollar green energy investment, one that had looked doomed just 2 hours prior. And yet, in the center of it all, Maya stood quietly, eyes down, a clipboard still in her hands. The room applauded, but she didn't bask in the attention. She looked out of place amidst the suits and champagne. Her uniform bore the company's cleaning department logo. Her shoes were practical, not polished. But her presence had eclipsed every executive in the room. Galloway approached her with careful curiosity. "Where did you learn to speak like that?" he asked. "My mom," she replied softly. "She taught me Japanese before she passed." He blinked. "And you've just been here, cleaning offices?" Maya nodded. "I help my dad. Nights and weekends." There was a long pause. Then Galloway turned to his assistant and said, "Get HR. I want her off the cleaning roster and in my department immediately." Within a week, Maya had a desk. Not in the janitor's closet, not in the basement, but on the executive floor. She was given a corporate laptop, a company badge with her name etched in silver, and a fast-tracked scholarship into the firm's International Leadership Development Program. Her promotion was internal news by day 3. By day 7, it was on LinkedIn, trending under #corporate transformation. But not everyone celebrated. Some saw her as a threat. A fluke, a viral story that would fade with time. "You skipped the line," one manager whispered near the espresso machine. "She's just a translator," another muttered. "It's not like she has a business degree." Maya heard it all. She felt the glances in the elevator, the accidental omission from meeting invites, the quiet pauses when she entered a room. But she said nothing. She worked harder. By the end of her second month, she was logging 18-hour days. During office hours, she handled correspondence with Japanese partners. After hours, she took online business courses, pored over company reports, and built her knowledge base from scratch. No one saw the sleepless nights or the coffee-stained notebooks filled with diagrams and contract notes. No one saw the sticky notes on her bathroom mirror, each with a motivational quote from her late mother. Then came the real test. Galloway called her into his office one morning. "We're preparing to expand the partnership into Southeast Asia. I want you on the team." Maya's heart pounded. She'd never been asked to build a proposal before, let alone for a regional expansion. Not just as a translator. She asked. Galloway smiled. "No, as a strategist." For the next 5 weeks, Maya became a quiet force in the corner of every key meeting. She cross-referenced environmental policies across 6 countries, drafted early-stage pitch decks in 3 languages, and organized every internal report with surgical precision. She even created a spreadsheet model that predicted ROI based on local government subsidies, model that would later be adopted by the firm across all departments. Her attention to detail stunned the executive team. She was no longer the janitor's daughter. She was Maya Thomas, strategic analyst, cultural liaison, and the emerging face of the firm's international diplomacy. When the day of the presentation arrived, Maya wore her mother's pearl earrings. Not expensive, but symbolic. As she stepped onto the presentation floor, facing a dozen international investors and a screen full of complex data, she took a breath and began. She didn't just deliver numbers. She told a story. She painted a picture of a Southeast Asia powered by green energy, where communities grew alongside the company's growth. Her words were sincere. Her data was bulletproof. And her delivery? Impeccable. When she handled a tough question from a Singaporean regulator with grace and clarity, switching effortlessly between English and Japanese, she won over even the toughest skeptics in the room. After the meeting, Mr. Sakamoto, now a close advisor to Galloway, shook her hand. "You are not a translator," he said. "You are a bridge." Later that week, Galloway announced Maya's promotion, International Liaison Manager. The announcement was met with applause from some, envy from others, and silence from a few. Among those silent, Andrew Lee, Senior Director of Strategy, a 23-year veteran of the firm. He had been quietly watching Maya's rise from the start, and he didn't like what he saw. "She's just a kid," he told a colleague. "No pedigree, no degree, just a story." But Maya's results spoke louder than his doubt. In just 4 months, her work had brought in over $400 million in projected value. She had formed bonds with foreign investors, improved internal efficiency, and been featured in 3 global trade publications. Still, Andrew was patient. He believed everyone made mistakes eventually. And when they did, he'd be ready. What Maya didn't know was that her next assignment, leading a live negotiation in Osaka, would be the most difficult challenge of her life. Not because of the language, not because of the pressure, but because someone on her own team would try to sabotage her. The sun over Osaka gleamed like polished gold as Maya stepped out of Kansai International Airport. Her mind buzzed with anticipation and strategy. This wasn't just a business trip. It was her first solo international assignment. No Galloway, no VP shadowing her, no safety net. She was leading the negotiation for the firm's microgrid pilot project, a sustainability initiative that could serve as a model for future energy partnerships across Asia. The board had confidence in her. Galloway had given her full authority to represent the company. But even as she reviewed the final proposal documents during the car ride to the hotel, Maya couldn't shake an unease in her chest. The source of that feeling. Andrew Lee, just days before departure, he had offered too eagerly to help finalize her briefing packet. "You've been running nonstop, Maya," he had said with a paternal tone. "Let me take something off your plate. I'll proof the Japanese version of the proposal and print it for you." It seemed innocent enough, but Andrew had no intention of helping. He saw this trip as the perfect trap. A single mistranslation in the printed proposal, one altered clause, could jeopardize the trust Maya had worked so hard to build. And when things went wrong, it wouldn't just embarrass her. It would call her entire rise into question. To Andrew, that was the only way to restore what he saw as the rightful corporate hierarchy. Maya had no reason to suspect him. She thanked him, she trusted the documents, and she boarded the plane with her usual calm. But by the time she arrived at the conference center in Osaka, a sleek building made of steel and bamboo cracks in the plan had already begun to show. The first was subtle. During the opening dialogue, one of the Japanese delegates, Mr. Hirota, raised an eyebrow as Maya referenced the company's commitment to shared technology infrastructure. "Your proposal," he said in Japanese, flipping through the translated packet, "implies that your firm will retain exclusive access to all energy data produced." Maya blinked. "That's not correct. Our intent is full data transparency." He held up the packet. "Then why does this clause say otherwise?" She reached for her copy, scanned it, and froze. The clause had been REWORDED, that it was subtle, 2 words switched, a verb tense altered, but in legal Japanese, it carried a very different meaning. Instead of promising transparency, it read as if the firm intended to hoard proprietary data. Maya's heartbeat quickened. This wasn't a typo. This was deliberate. "I believe this version is incorrect," she said carefully. It must have been printed in error, but the damage had begun. The trust in the room shifted. Tension thickened. She pushed through the rest of the meeting with all the composure she could muster, translating with grace, redirecting attention to the core values of the project. But the seed of doubt had been planted. If the Japanese team believed the proposal was misleading, the entire partnership could fall apart. Back in her hotel room that night, Maya sat on the floor in front of her laptop, cross-checking every line of the English and Japanese drafts. Her eyes burned, her breath shallow. And then she saw it, metadata embedded in the document. The Japanese version had been edited, not by her. The timestamp led to a machine inside corporate HQ, and the user ID? Ali's hands trembled. Anger swelled in her chest. He had set her up. On foreign soil. With billions at stake. She could call Galloway, expose everything, and go on the defensive. But no, something inside her said, fight smarter. Win first. So she stayed up all night, revising the entire proposal, printing a fresh Japanese version, and preparing a new deck that not only corrected the issue, but proved how the misunderstanding had occurred. The next morning, she walked into the boardroom with fire in her eyes. Before we begin, she said in Japanese, bowing deeply, I would like to issue a formal apology for yesterday's confusion. I have discovered that the translated document presented was not the final approved version. She handed out the new packets. This version reflects our original intention: full data transparency, open infrastructure, and bilateral cooperation. Mr. Hirota, read it carefully. After a tense minute, he looked up. This is very different. Thank you for the clarification. The tone of the meeting shifted again, but this time in her favor. By the end of the session, the Osaka team agreed to proceed with the pilot project. Maya had salvaged the deal. Later that night, she forwarded the metadata proof of Andrew's tampering directly to Galloway with a simple note. This could have cost us everything. I fixed it, but you need to know who tried to break it. Within 48 hours, Andrew Lee was escorted out of the building. Not with a press release, not with dignity, but with silence. The boardroom in Los Angeles was buzzing again, but this time, not with panic or confusion. The morning sun cut through the windows, casting warm streaks of gold across the long mahogany table. The company's top brass sat in rows, papers in hand, murmuring among themselves. At the head of the table stood Richard Galloway, cool and composed, flanked by Maya Thomas on one side and the legal advisor on the other. Galloway tapped his pen gently against the table, calling the room to attention. Before we begin, he said, I want to remind everyone why we're here. We're not just here to review quarterly gains, which, thanks to Maya's work in Osaka, are the best we've seen in 5 years. We're here to talk about transformation. He gestured toward Maya. For years, our firm has talked about innovation, agility, and global reach. But until now, we've never had a bridge strong enough to truly span culture and commerce. Maya built that bridge. The room fell silent, and that's why I'm proposing a new executive role, Vice President of Global Cultural Strategy, to oversee international negotiations, corporate inclusion, and regional adaptation strategy. This role is crucial, and it needs the right person. He turned toward Maya. I nominate Maya Thomas. Gasps, shuffling. One executive, an older woman from Achora, clapped softly. Others stared, stunned. She's 23. Someone whispered, she doesn't have an MBA. Another muttered, but Galloway raised his hand. She speaks 6 languages. She's saved 2 multi-million-dollar deals. And she has the trust of foreign partners in a way none of us ever managed. One board member, skeptical but intrigued, leaned forward. May I ask Ms. Thomas a question? Maya nodded. Double quotes. How do you plan to represent a company that hasn't always represented people like you? The question was sharp, loaded, but Maya didn't flinch. She stood, her voice calm. This company didn't see me for years. But when I had the chance to speak, I didn't speak just for myself. I spoke for the deal, for the partnership, and for the future. She paused. If we only trust people who come from the same places, who wear the same suits, who studied at the same schools, we'll keep repeating the same mistakes. I represent what the world is becoming, not what it was." There was silence. Then Galloway spoke. "Let's vote." One by one, the hands went up. 9, 10, 11. Unanimous. The youngest executive in company history. The first black woman in the C-suite. The first VP who had ever started in the janitor's closet. That afternoon, Maya walked into her new office. Bigger than any room she'd ever cleaned. On the window, in subtle silver letters, it read, "Maya Thomas, Vice President, Global Cultural Strategy," but she didn't linger. She sat, opened her laptop, and got to work. 6 months had passed since Maya Thomas became the youngest executive in the firm's history, and her days had become a blur of diplomacy, strategy, and global travel. From Seoul to São Paulo, she was no longer the janitor's daughter. She was now recognized as a visionary. But despite the accolades, Maya remained grounded. Her father, Thomas, still worked part-time at the office, even though she had offered more than once to support him fully. "I like to keep moving," he said with a grin. "And I like hearing your name on everyone's lips." It was during a quiet afternoon in her office that the email came. Subject: Invitation to Lecture, Tokyo Kisei Degaku. Maya's eyebrows rose. She opened the message. It was from Professor Rika Yamamoto, a renowned linguist and cultural strategist in Japan. The message read, "Dear Ms. Thomas, your work has reached our university through Mr. Sekimoto and several faculty members. We believe your journey, insights, and cross-cultural fluency would greatly inspire our students. Would you consider joining us as a guest lecturer for our International Communication and Policy series next month? Warm regards, Professor Rika Yamamoto." Maya accepted immediately. The lecture hall in Tokyo was packed. Students filled every seat, with others standing along the walls. Maya stood at the podium, dressed modestly, with her mother's pearls still adorning her ears. Her presentation wasn't just about corporate strategy. It was about voice, finding it, using it, and protecting it. She shared her mother's teachings, her father's silence, the way being invisible had made her more observant. When the lecture ended, applause echoed like thunder. As the students began to disperse, a soft voice from the second row called out, "Your mother was Naomi James, yes?" Maya turned. An older woman approached, elegant, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "She studied with me," the woman said, "at Waseda University. She loved haiku and always carried a notebook of poems. We lost touch after she returned to the US, but I never forgot her." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes. "You knew my mom? She said she would teach her daughter to speak bridges." The woman smiled. "And you did, just as she dreamed." They embraced, and Maya felt for the first time in years like her mother was there in the room. Later that evening, back in her Tokyo hotel, Maya sat by the window, looking out at the glowing skyline. Her inbox was filled with messages, more lecture invitations, media requests, and even an offer to publish a book, but she didn't answer them yet. She opened a fresh notebook and began to write a haiku just like her mother used to. They did not see me till I spoke the silent thread and built bridges wide. Her mother had been right. Words were bridges, and Maya had crossed oceans with them. Maya Thomas stepped off the plane at LAX, not as a visitor, but as a woman on a mission. Tokyo had given her more than a standing ovation. It had handed her a mirror to see herself not just as a rising executive, but as a symbol. And with that realization came responsibility. Within days of returning, Maya scheduled a meeting with Richard Galloway. "I have an idea," she told him, seated in his office, her voice steady. "Not for a deal, not for profit, for purpose." He leaned in. "I want to create a mentorship initiative," she said. "Something global, something local. A program to find young people who, like me, grew up unseen, janitors' kids, refugees, undocumented students, and give them access to language learning, global business exposure, and leadership training. Galloway looked at her. "You want the company to sponsor this?" "No," she replied. "I want the company to build it with me. Not for press, for legacy." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll have my full support." And so the Bridge Initiative was born. 6 months later, the first cohort launched with 50 students across 5 countries. Each participant was paired with a mentor in business, policy, or international law. Workshops were held virtually and in person. Maya personally taught the first masterclass on negotiation and cross-cultural fluency. She watched as a Nigerian teen in Lagos debated respectfully with a French environmentalist, as a Brazilian girl presented a bilingual pitch to Japanese investors, as an Indonesian boy shared how he'd been teaching himself 3 languages by reading street signs. She saw herself in every one of them. Back in Los Angeles, Maya also quietly funded scholarships at local community colleges under her mother's name. Each award was labeled Naomi James Bridge Builder Scholarship. Her father, Thomas, now fully retired, attended every ceremony. One evening, after presenting a scholarship at her former high school, Maya walked through the halls where once no one noticed her. Now her name was etched above the library. Entrance: the Maya Thomas Language and Leadership Center. A security guard stopped her. "Miss Thomas?" he asked. "My niece is one of the students in your Japan program. She says you changed her life." Maya smiled. "She did that herself. I just gave her the mic." 2 years later, Maya stood on the TED stage, the red circle beneath her feet. The crowd was silent, waiting. She began with a question. "What if the next world-changing leader is sweeping a hallway right now?" Her talk, "The Power of the Unseen Voice," would go viral within days. It wasn't just about rising from poverty. It was about rewriting the rules of who gets to sit at the table. In a quiet park in South Los Angeles, Maya sat with her father on a wooden bench under a tree. Kids ran in the distance, and a gentle breeze played with the pages of the journal in her lap. "You've gone far." Thomas signed with his hands. Maya smiled, responding in fluent sign. "Only because you showed me how." He nodded, his eyes full of pride. "You know," he signed, "your mother would be so proud." Maya looked up at the sky. "I hope she knows. Every time I speak, I carry her words." They sat in silence for a moment, 2 generations connected by quiet strength. And in that stillness, with no cameras, no boardrooms, no billion-dollar contracts, Maya Thomas, the janitor's daughter turned global VP, smiled. Because the real deal, the legacy, was already sealed. The world had finally learned to listen.